Season 2 of Everybody Hates Church is brought to you by Life and Legacy Counselors, your estate planning attorneys. Do you have a plan to build wealth that will last generations? Life and Legacy Counselors works with individuals, families, and communities to create, protect, and transfer wealth. For more information and to schedule your consultation, reach them online at lifeandlegacy.law or by phone at 855-574-8481.
First off, I'm no church boy, but boy, I'm like in my lane. Got the Jesus walk, not yay, but it is one name. He is Lord, yep, still talking that, yeah, my pen's the same. It's notable how I got quotables when I am promoting his fame. I got a habit of preaching, I got a habit of teaching, got a habit of hitting the floor when I'm in his face like I got a weak chin. Light of the world, keeping us lit, find me a pearl, he will eclipse, got a referral, Jesus is it.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Hates Church, conversations at the intersection of church and culture. I'm Dr. Bobby Manning. This is an exciting episode that we are coming up on right now, and I just want to make sure that you participate in the conversation. Jump into the comment section. Let us know what you think, because we are talking about a pretty sensitive topic today, something that's been happening quite a bit in culture and church. This isn't a convergence, this is a clash of church and culture, as today we talk about Everybody Hates the D9. What do you think about fraternities, sororities, Black Greek letter organizations, and how they intersect with our faith? Make sure you click like, comment, share this with folks that you've been having this conversation with, and let's have the conversation together. I'm excited to have my guest with me to kind of have this conversation with. This gentleman is a worship leader. He's a worship and creative coach. He is the president of Synergy Media Group. He's the creative director of Hopeville Church in Baltimore, Maryland. And he's also the chapter president of the Iota Alpha Lambda chapter of our fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But before all of that, he's my friend. I've known him for years. Grateful for his ministry and grateful for him being with us today on Everybody Hates Church. Y'all give it up for my brother, Trevor Chin. What's up, my guy?
Thank you, bro. Man, I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you for jumping on the podcast with us. This is a conversation that's happening everywhere. It's happening on YouTube. It's happening on all the social media. YouTube is going crazy with people denouncing. But bro, they denouncing everything. They're not just denouncing the D9. But we got folks denouncing their college. Somebody denounced Spelman College, man. And so it's a hot topic. It's one that kind of centers around, us in this manner. And so we got to have this conversation. My prayer is that we can have it without kind of some of the raw emotion that comes from, because I got to be honest, I feel a kind of way, and I got to make sure that I have the conversation in a healthy way. But I'm grateful for you, because you have, since before I joined the frat, helped me kind of think clearly about some of this stuff. And so, man, thanks again, man. Thanks for jumping on to the podcast with us. My question to you, just what has been your immediate response? Denouncing's not new. It's been happening quite a bit, but it's been hot recently on social media and on YouTube. So I would say over the last 6 to 12 months, what's been your response to some of this denouncing wave that's happening?
Yeah, man. Well, first, listen, I appreciate you having me on here. I'm gonna take the high road, and everybody that denouncing, I'm with them. So you wrong. I don't know what I'm playing. Listen, I'm going with the majority on YouTube, but I'm playing.
You gonna play the bad cop? I'm with it. No, or the good cop. Maybe I'm the bad cop.
I think that it's one of the things that's always been happening, but social media allows it to be it gives everybody a platform to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
So I think that we're seeing it a lot now more.
Yeah, much more public.
Much more public.
It gets ripples now. And so at one point it's a throw of a rock. Now because of the genius of social media, it's a throw of a rock that ripples and creates waves. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I talked to a few brothers, even like a brother specifically, I'm not gonna name his name, but that works in the headquarters. And he was saying like every day he's getting a letter, like yet another letter of someone someone denouncing, and I think the initial knee-jerk reaction was frustration, if I'm honest, and understanding. I mean, at the same space, like I get a lot of the places where people get to. Like I understand when they get to the space of like, yo, I can't do this anymore. My frustration becomes when you make it gospel and you make your convictions have to be my convictions. Or demonize me for not coming to the same conclusions or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of my biggest thing. There's been a lot of noise or a lot of commentary around people denouncing, but what I've appreciated, there's very few, which is why I appreciate even this podcast, but like Dr. R.A. Vernon.
Yeah, R.A. Vernon came hard. Like he went in.
He was like, yo.
Shout out to Dr. R.A. Vernon, the Word Church in Cleveland, Ohio, a fellow member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
He was like, yo,
let's talk about it.
I looked at it. I said, you know, they develop leaders. I want to. You know what I mean? That sounds like something that we do in my church.
Yeah, we'll talk. I mean, and that's something we'll talk about it later in the conversation. But yeah, it's for me a lot of times as I think about it, I was like, man, the principles of it, and for the record, you know, we can only speak for the fraternity that we are a part of, right? Now we know folks in all 9 of the D9, and we can't speak for them, but I think we got an idea of what they might say. But when it comes down to this particular fraternity that you and I have chosen to be a part of, the principles of the fraternity, they coincide so much with the principles that I decided that I was going to live by long before I ever wore these colors. And so there's that. And I think that's super important. But to your point a few minutes ago, I appreciate it because I truly believe my immediate response was to go deeper, because for me, the last 12 months, really 18 months, I'm not already in the fraternity. I'm, as the terminology we would use, I'm seeking the light. Like I'm looking to connect with the fraternity, and so a lot of it had to be me as I'm listening and looking and listening with grace. I'm like, okay, let me examine myself. Let me examine my motives. Let me examine this organization. And so it sent me into a deep dive to actually ask the questions that are being raised in the denouncing videos. And so I watched them. I can't say I watched all of them, but I watched a bunch of them.
And not a good joke, but like our conversation, and that's what, and I really had an appreciation for our conversation. And there's a couple people other in there.
Because you were one of the people that I called. Like
your question was like, yo, Trev. I don't want to go further if it's something crazy. Please let me know. Now I talk to this person, I talk to that person, but like, is there something crazy that I'm like, and is it gonna be the blood of a goat? Is there something crazy? He said, I don't want no issue. I don't want no thing. I said, bro, it's not. I said, these are the things, but like, it's not. It ain't that. So I appreciated the
absolutely.
question.
So my immediate response was to dig deep, and before I called you, I listened to the people who were denouncing. And I say, okay, what are you saying? Okay, let me do further research. And then there were some people, yourself included, that I trust. I trust because it's one thing, and you'll get to probably know this, that coming into a fraternity or sorority while you're in college is actually quite different than coming into it when you are an adult in the alumni chapter. And so as a grown man with a fully developed theology, been to seminary and back and around the corner twice, right? Going in fully clear on what my theology is, I wanted to talk to people who I trusted had done the same thing. And so I called you, I called Charlie, I called some other folks just to say, hey, let's talk this through. And that's the exact question I asked you. Look, and I asked others as well. Hey, is this like, because here's the thing. I know there's some things you can't tell me, but what I don't want to do is be surprised. And I don't want to roll up on something and be like, whoa, wait a minute, you want me to do what?
Man, let me get up out of here. Let me move.
and you guys just kind of gave me that assurance. And it wasn't like I was calling some person who didn't know the fraternity, somebody who didn't know what was going on, or somebody who didn't have a fully developed theology when they went through it. Yeah. I'm talking to somebody who went through it. So thank you, because that was my immediate response. And then my response after that is, okay, I see how you got there.
Yeah.
As I'm listening, I'm like, man, I see how you got there.
That's where the compassion side comes in.
I see the steps. As somebody who grew up in church, somebody who knows the word, and somebody who understands how church folks think.
Yeah.
I see how you got there. And so there's a lot of grace and understanding. Now, I didn't get to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
You zigged when I would have zagged when it comes to this decision or this understanding of scripture or this understanding of the fraternity or sorority. But I understand, and bro, I really believe this. Some people should denounce.
I 100% agree.
Some people should denounce. If you get to the end of your research and realize that for you, this is an idol, this is detracting and distracting from your walk with Jesus, this is something that I've placed over and above the lordship of Jesus Christ, or, man, I got into this thing and I didn't know what I was getting into and I don't like what I've gotten into. It doesn't sit well with my spirit. If that's your story, I think you should denounce. I don't think you should be a part of something that detracts you from your walk with Jesus. For you to make that, as you said a moment ago, for you to make that the truth, your truth, the truth for all of us, in a way that, in my opinion, is not consistent with biblical theology, we have a word for that, and it's called legalism.
Yeah.
It's making something a personal conviction a corporate conviction.
Absolutely.
And something that I got to do because the Lord convicted you to do it.
Absolutely. And then I was talking to one of my guys about this today, actually, on the way down here. One of the things I love about the South is you see the D9 in a different light. I mean, it's heavy. I mean, it's up here too, but like it's enhanced when you get down. I'm in South Carolina last summer, and I'm down there. I got cues throwing up the hooks at me, showing love. I got cappers showing love, and what I recognize, especially down, and it happens up here too, but like I said, it's just intensified down there. People join these organizations and could be, for the first time in their whole life, identity, value, appreciation, community. Now I'm speaking of like a non-believer. First time they ever felt seen in a space, and they embody what it means to be this D9 member. And then they run up into the gospel. The gospel and Jesus and the church, and they're growing. And it's like
Jesus, as it should be, becomes what they were looking for in the D9.
And it was like, oh my gosh. I was viewing this as my identity. I was viewing this as my this. Like Alpha became, or this organization became this thing for me that it should have never have been. Now it's in the way. Now it's a hindrance. Now I see, and I don't like. I went through the whole thing. Got saved early on through all the Jay-Z CDs.
Exactly.
So it turns into one of those things, which is like you said. I'm like, I get it. Like why did you join the organization?
Why did you join?
Why some people join for the college clout, for the community, for the identity, for the whatever in whatever stage you wanted to join. As a grown man with a wife and kids, when I joined, my reasonings for joining, we can get to that later, but they were very different, very intentional.
Let's talk about that, because we don't got to talk about it later, because it's similar for me. As somebody who fully developed theology, but also my identity is secure in Christ. But pre-Alpha, pre-fraternity, my identity is secure in Christ. There were so many things about this particular fraternity that gave me space to be outside of the title of Dr. Bobby Manning, outside of the title of Pastor Bobby Manning, because my life as a pastor is different. Community in the local church is different from me as a senior pastor. And so there, what Alpha was for me at the very beginning of this journey is a space where I can just be Bobby. I put that, like, when I crossed, I made a post just because I knew people would ask questions. And
you did, sir.
and I wanted
focus screenshot and send it to me like,
and because I felt like I owed a explanation, not to any individual, but I did owe an explanation to the body of Christ.
That's good, bro.
As somebody that people look to for spiritual guidance, for doctrine, for teaching, etc. I owed an explanation to the body of Christ. And so I made this post and I said, look, this ain't for everybody. But it was for me at this time. And I appreciate it from the time that I started peering over the fence of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I found it as something that was consistent with who I already am. I haven't changed anything about myself in order to become a part of this fraternity. And including my spiritual walk, including my spiritual growth, including who I am in my identity spiritually. Nothing about me has changed. It's me saying, me being a part of this organization is consistent with who I am as a human being, as a man.
So 2016, a friend of mine, man, Charlie Mitchell, and I moved to Baltimore to plant Epiphany Baltimore. And coming from me from Jersey, him from Florida, I moved to Maryland, and I was like, oh, this is a different beast. Like, this is... I grew up, I'd never seen a black middle class, a black working class. There's just so many things. I was just like, this is very unique. But I also saw I don't want to say cliquish, but like communal nature. Of the Maryland area, DMV as a whole. Everything, especially in Baltimore, everything rides on relationship and relationship alone. 100%. You do not get access without relationships.
Absolutely.
And as Charlie was in the denominational spaces, I was like, man, what's something that I would love to be a part of something. I would love to be able to use, if I'm being transparent, like use something like Alpha as a conduit to be able to have access, have community, X, Y, Z. So for me, it was I want to enhance. I want community. I want brotherhood. I grew up as an only child. I have a sister, but like there's a lot of those kind of aspects. And I was like, man, I really want to be a part of something else outside of the church that's also doing the things that I want to do, and a community that I can lean on to help with a church plant in Baltimore.
And not even lean on, but it's a space that we can take the light of Christ into.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, man, if I am light to the world as a follower of Jesus, but I only live around other lights. Then how much of a light am I? And so it's an opportunity for me, for us to be like, yeah, I'm a pastor, and yes, we can be in community together. And if you have a question about Jesus, I'm glad to be the one that you ask.
Absolutely. And then for my chapter, and I ran into a few folks. My sponsor, Dr. Darren Thompson, is a pastor. Has been pastor for 19 years, but been in ministry for 28. I should know that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But man, ran up on him when I first got introduced to the chapter, and the development that he poured into me, like the care that he poured into me. Encouragement. Because of that relationship and how he even welcomed me through Alpha, but our general relationship, my life is better because of him.
Amen.
My marriage is better because of him.
Absolutely.
I'm a better father because of him. Granted, through the work of Jesus and the Holy Spirit and all that kind of stuff. Yes. But if it wasn't for me running into him while aspiring to be an Alpha and him walking me through that process and our relationship connecting and strengthening, like the Lord used Alpha.
So look at this. You mean to tell me that there's been a spiritual benefit?
100%, bro.
You mean to tell me that you bowing to the Greek gods has
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's the only time I'm gonna be flippant and dismissive.
Facetious.
Because I have to work hard not to get in my feelings. Because folks have with me, as I'm sure they have with you, jumped into my DMs and suggested things that are simply not true.
Absolutely.
Suggested that, and even some members of our church who have questions. I don't know if there's anybody at Hopeville or Epiphany Baltimore prior to that, oh man, if you're a member of this organization, I can't be a member of your church. That certainly happened with me.
Really?
And so, and again, there's grace, because they were like, look, it's a stumbling block, and I got to remove the stumbling. Okay, cool. Yeah. There's grace there. I'm not judgmental towards it. And so, there was somebody who again, in love, they DM'd me and they were like, hey, do you know what's going on? And do you know what these fraternities are about? And I'm like, yeah, what makes you think that I would go into this, first of all, without doing the research for myself?
Absolutely.
Second of all, what makes you think this organization will let me in if I haven't done the research? Like, there's, I truly believe this, and I could be wrong, but here's what, in my experience, my brief experience in this particular organization, I believe that there's nobody who knows more about the organization just off the top of their head than a neo, than somebody who's brand new, because we had to completely engulf ourselves into the history of this organization. And so just this idea that, number one, I know how to do research because I had to do it for a doctorate degree. Yep. I had to do it for a master's degree. And so just full understanding of the history. And so they hit me back, like, well, you need to do more research. And I'm like, okay. And then I kind of let it go, but it's like, okay, I feel like some of us need to do more research than watching YouTube videos.
Absolutely.
And really, hit the primary sources. But having said that, let's talk about some of the objections that people have had in these denouncing videos, because I think some of it has again, understandable how they got there, but I think there's a bit of misunderstanding about the organizations. What's more scary to me is these Christians aren't. It looks like a lot of proof texting on scriptures that it doesn't look like you've done full exegesis on this scripture. So talk to me. What are some of the kind of the big red flags that people have expressed in your experience and just kind of watching some of the denouncing videos?
There is, I think the biggest one that I would deduce would really fall on the idol worship and the idolatry.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's the one that I think that kind of is the baseline for a lot of them. Like I said, that is why I can agree in some cases of why some people should be denouncing if it is if anything takes the throne of your heart. Outside of Jesus, then
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
I do think that's one of the bigger ones. Now I'm gonna hit you with I'm gonna ask you even more not controversial one, but like one that, and our general president I think did a phenomenal job at our last Eastern Region Convention up in Philly, kind of communicating through some of this one. But the one that always comes up is Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the light of the world.
Yeah.
What was your initial? How did you wrestle through that? Because that was one that, and there's brothers who I trust and respect. And I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Reverend Watson Jones was one of those.
Yeah.
That was the one that I brought up to him. But what was your kind of initial?
So I think that for that one specifically, I don't think that anybody. And I can't say anybody. When I hear Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is the light of the world, it speaks to me of the work that the fraternity does in the community.
Absolutely.
It doesn't replace first of all, the songs we sung that Jesus is the light of the world, that's not actually biblical, but it's a song that we sung. But then Jesus' statement that when he talks to his disciples, he says, you are the light of the world, you are the salt of the earth, the light shall not be hidden, the salt shouldn't lose its saltiness. And so he's
You're giving
saying,
too much Bible
he's saying, no,
come on.
well, why are
I'm
we
with
doing
you.
this if we're not talking
sir.
Bible, right?
Yes, sir. You're talking, Doc.
And so General President Lonzer said, hey, we're not saying that we replace Jesus, and if anybody thinks that we're trying to replace Jesus, they're mistaken. What I would say is Jesus told his disciples that it's your responsibility to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world.
Yes, word.
He's talking to disciples, not church, because the church is not developed yet. The church won't be developed until Acts 3. He's talking to disciples, and he's saying, it's your responsibility, Bobby. It's your responsibility, Trevor. It's your responsibility, Peter, James, Andrew, to be the light of the world and to carry that light to illuminate the name of Christ in the world. Okay? Now, I believe that because what Alpha Phi Alpha is, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated develops leaders, promotes brotherhood and academic excellence while providing service and advocacy for our communities. That is the work. When I believe it speaks to doing the work. It speaks to the work that Alpha does. It doesn't speak to some idea that the fraternity replaces Jesus, or even that the fraternity replaces the church.
Absolutely.
I believe we are clear on who Jesus is. I'm abundantly clear on who Jesus is. I'm abundantly clear on what the church is. And as a member of the global and local church, I am not limited to doing that work in church. I can do that work in church, in my neighborhood, and through my fraternity, and still bring glory to Jesus while I'm doing it.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. That's a good word. And then to backtrack even a little bit, you fast forward even in the book of Acts, you get to Paul in Acts 17. And he is doing people don't like when I say it, but he's code switching in some regard. He's speaking in the temple.
Yes.
He's speaking at the Areopagus. Matter of fact,
everywhere.
He's blending in all of these spaces
Everywhere.
to communicate the goodness of the gospel.
Yes.
And I mean, even the and there's a song about it now, but to him who breathe, live, in him do I live,
move, and have my being.
That was he was quoting one of their poets, one of their gods, and communicating to them in a way that they would understand. So I think that there's, even for believers to be a part of these BGLOs, like we need to have, wherever there is going to be darkness, we need to have light. Wherever there is to be people, from a missional perspective, I think we should be a part of these things.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And so when I hear it, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I understand though that if somebody else hears it and it bothers them and it's a hang up for them, again, there's grace that it's a hang up for you. It just simply isn't a hang up for me because, again, I know that Jesus, John 1, he is the light, and in him was the light of men, right? That Jesus told his disciples that you are light and salt. And so for me, it's more innocuous than anything else. A lot of the stuff I think is that are stumbling blocks for others is just kind of innocuous to me. But again, one thing is that's not innocuous is what you said earlier about this idea of idol worship.
Yeah.
That there's connection to Greek gods, Greek mythology, and what do we believe about this idea? Because a lot of it is, I heard someone say, if you're a member of a Black Greek letter organization, you are, I think they said, you are in covenant with the principalities of the city. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of it's a lot of words.
Is a reach.
And man, it was that's a struggle for me. But again, what would you say to somebody who's saying, well, there's Greek gods, there's Greek origin, and you bowed to a Greek god when you became a member of this organization? Yeah,
I think that we can. Well, I think it's happened in a lot of ways. A lot of this is symbolism.
Yes.
A lot of this is relational connection. A lot of this is connecting us. It started for community. It started for to keep these men in college,
yes.
and study
Academics,
sessions,
yes.
and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So with all these things starting like that, they took a few things and all right, well, what do we need to,
Right.
we want to do a fraternity, like what do we need to be able to do that? Well, let's take whatever we need to take
Right.
to be, to be able to establish that. But I think that we forget that we're talking about 18, 19, 20 years,
Sure.
24 years old at the oldest. For me, it's heavy on the symbolism.
Right.
And the purpose of the ritual is what binds us. Like,
And so let's start here. That I think you and I can both affirm that you and I pledged no commitment or allegiance to any Greek god when we
bow to one.
We didn't bow to anybody. We didn't bow to any Greek god. We recognize, as many of the Greeks do, that Greek mythology is mythology. So let's begin there. But I think you're hitting something on the nail that really needs to be spoken, is that a lot of what the denouncers are saying is spiritual is actually for us symbolic.
Yeah.
It's a symbol that speaks to an underlying principle. So I am not committed to any Greek god, including the Sphinx of Giza, but I am committed to the symbol or the principle that it symbolizes for the fraternity.
Absolutely.
Because there are things that the Sphinx of Giza symbolizes for members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, that, again, you could do that research, that, again, is already part of who I am. And so for me, it's not spiritual. My spiritual allegiance to Jesus is to Jesus at all times.
Absolutely.
But it's symbolic for me. And so because it symbolizes something, my commitment is to the principles that it symbolizes. And so we got to be careful.
Yeah, but, and just to put one quick sentence in, but that's why I have a difficult time having conversations with people that did not come through Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated around this, because and I don't want to oversimplify it, but the misconceptions, even with with the Sphinx, like the misconceptions versus like what it actually symbolizes,
absolutely,
are so far apart.
Absolutely,
and it's assumptions, and there are now again there are a lot of alphas that that have denounced, and I get it,
right,
but for folks that are not in these BGLOs specifically, because I'm not going to speak about Phi Beta Sigma. I'm not going to speak about Phi Nu Pi. Like I'm not. I don't know what they went to. Maybe they did. I didn't.
And there's another part of it too, as well as, again, the difference in what chapter you come through and the education you get on the way in. I'm just blessed to have come through a chapter where they spend a lot of time. First of all, before I came in, they spent a lot of time saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? Do the research."
How many times you got out?
Right.
You can leave right now.
You can leave right now. Because what they didn't want was for me to come in, tell everybody I'm in, especially somebody who has a little bit of a following and a little bit of, whatever comes with whatever. And they didn't want me to come in, and then 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, coming out talk about I should have never done this, right?
Absolutely.
And so they held my feet to the fire. No, go watch the video. Have you watched the video? Watch this one too, because they wanted me to know. And then on the other side of it, they said, okay, now on the other side of the ritual, this is what the ritual is. This is what you do. This is why we have this symbol or that symbol. And it makes me wonder, the folks who denounce, like, were you paying attention during ritual training? Yeah. Were you paying attention when they explained to you what this is and what it symbolizes? And did you have people who are Jesus followers in this process with you? I was blessed that I had so many people like yourself and others who were Jesus followers that were walking with me through this process so that I could be clear and the Bible teaches us to test all spirits.
Absolutely.
And I spent a great deal of time, testing those spirits. Season 2 of Everybody Hates Church is brought to you by Cora Alkaline Water, the next generation in water. Enjoy the smooth and refreshing taste of Cora, available at DMV retailers such as Safeway and 7-Eleven, and online at corawater.com. You know, the Greek god imagery, I know it's a big hang up for a lot of people. For you and I think it's safe to say that it's symbolic. And guess what our culture is full of?
Come on, man.
Symbolism from Greek mythology. Bro, it's everywhere. You know, it's everywhere. And if we get rid of everything that has origin in Greek mythology, we be getting rid of a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
You know who was a Greek god? Nike. Nike is the Greek goddess of victory.
Yeah.
and so if you've spent hundreds of dollars on Nikes, have you pledged allegiance to the Greek? No.
Absolutely.
Nike is Nike not because of the spiritual aspect. Nike is Nike because it symbolizes victory.
Absolutely.
That's why they called it Nike. You know what else is a Greek god? The siren on your Starbucks cup.
Oh, I didn't know.
The siren on the Starbucks cup is a Greek god who literally lured sailors to their death with her with her smell and with her sensuality. That's why they put it on the Starbucks cup. Because that's what Starbucks does. It draws you in because of its smell. And so we got to get rid of Nike. We got to get rid of Starbucks. As Dr. Verner said, we got to get rid of the symbol out front of the U.S. courthouse. But we don't pledge allegiance to those Greek gods. We pledge allegiance. We don't even pledge allegiance. We grab the symbolism of what it means because it symbolizes something that is core to who we already are. And I think it's again something to remember about culture and symbols versus spirituality. I don't want to be flippant, but yeah, I think people can kind of over spiritualize some things that, for me at least, it's just not that serious. I shouldn't say not that serious. It's not that spiritual.
Yeah.
It's symbolic, and we're grabbing hold of the symbols.
Yeah, and again, on the other hand, also, I don't want to oversimplify it either.
Yeah.
And to say that it's meaningless and nothingness. Mm-hmm. But to your point, the spiritual components that I think that we want to always interject. Yeah. They're not always there. Yeah. You mentioned it earlier. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to motivation of why. Yeah. Oftentimes, why did people join these organizations? And the other big piece you said was how you came in, when you came in, grad, undergrad, whatever, like college alumni, whatever the case may be, because those experiences are different. I was introduced to a chapter that had pastors and people that I was able to bounce questions off.
Likewise, both of our chapters, the maturity level of those. Somebody asked me last week because their son is in college and interested in the fraternity, and they were asking me about my journey, and I just had to tell them, hey, my journey into the fraternity is going to be different than his journey into the fraternity, only because the people who are bringing you across, there's differing levels of maturity, values, things that are important, etc. And so
we weren't worried about getting clout on campus.
No, we were not.
We wasn't. we wasn't worried about, you know what I mean, being able to host the next big party on campus and other. Right. And I'm not.
No, because that's a beautiful. I mean, I think being in college, that's a beautiful part of being a part of a fraternity. Is hanging out with guys, doing college stuff with people who are like-minded, stepping and strolling it's core to the African American experience. I take me to a step show, please. I loved and I went to a PWI. We drove to Fayetteville just to go to the step shows, so we could see the folks doing their thing. I think that's germane to the African American experience. Which, Trev, I want to talk about this part of it. And one of my chapter brothers said this as well, and I gotta say amen to it. It feels like we're only denouncing things that are black.
Ooh-wee.
We're only denouncing the black institutions.
Yeah.
Why is our Christian God not calling us to denounce things that are not African American in its culture and in its core, and it causes me to look at it. It's the HBCUs and the BGLOs that we're denouncing. That's on the chopping block, and I wonder how much of evangelicalism is pushing us in that direction. But all that to say, man, I believe that there's beauty in a lot of the stuff that happens. And yes, is there sinfulness? Yeah. Is there people who don't understand or don't do these things correctly? Yeah. As with every other human institution, human organization.
Absolutely.
Including the church.
Come on.
How much idolatry is in the church? How much human worship is in the church? Not to be dismissive, but we just got to know that wherever humans are, there will be flaws, and that doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. That means that you identify that which is blank canvas and is redeemable, and identify that which needs to be purged from that space.
Dude, listen, I was frat brother sent me a dissertation yesterday. I was kind of looking through it. I cannot remember the Dr. Mia, I want to say. Either way.
We'll get the name.
But one of the things she sought to discover or uncover why people were denouncing. And a few of those things that were on there, hierarchical structures, idolatry was one of them. Just a lot of general things. One of the things that she that I recognized even in the midst of that article was, in her dissertation, was like, all these things exist in the church. All of these things exist in the church. And especially in the African American experience, a lot of the things that we lean on in the church, in the African American experience specifically, is because of the lack of value that we had, the lack of connection that we had. Titles come from that. Robes come from that. To be able to differentiate Cossacks, and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff exists in the church, and that's why I'm like, we're picking at straws. We're picking at straws. So I want you. Not you, but I want for the person or for the Alpha or BGLO member that is seeking to. And we just went through this deconstruction thing as well. Sure. You know what I mean? So, like, to answer your first question, this is just the next wave of things that's being deconstructed or denounced.
Sure.
And it's on the chopping block. But for that person, if your conviction pushes you that way, then do it. But your conviction can't be mine, because you don't know my motivations. You know what I mean? You don't know our motivations for why we joined this thing, or why we wanted to be a part of the thing, or even what we're doing now that we're. I mean, now that we're in it.
Absolutely.
I mean, the amount of leverage now that me personally has, even as the chapter president for my chapter, to be able to do good in the community and to be able to serve and to be able to care. Oh man!
And to be a carrier of the gospel.
Yeah,
I think that's. I don't want that to be too easily dismissed, right? That we are carriers of the gospel. Again, we are light of the world. We are salt of the earth. Let's talk about it if we want to talk about it. If a salt loses its saltiness, what purpose does it have? Absolutely. You know how salt loses its saltiness? By never making it out of the salt shaker. Our salt is only as good as our ability to get out of the salt shaker and onto things that need salt.
That's good, Doc.
And I believe that the spaces that the gospel is most effective are outside of our church buildings and outside of our church institutions. The church, everybody hates church. Let's talk about it. The church is designed to equip the saints for the work of service.
Yep.
My job as a pastor is to make sure that every believer who's connected with the Heights Church knows how to take the gospel outside of this building where they are. If you are a professional church grower, I haven't done my job.
Absolutely.
My job is to get you outside so that when you get there, you represent Jesus. When you get there, you show people what it looks like to be a believer and a follower of Jesus. And if that is in your community, great. If that's in your motorcycle club, great. If that's in your Black Greek letter organization, great. If that's down the street and around the corner, wherever you can be salt. And I think salt and light is at its best when it's in bland and dark places.
I was listening to Dr. Darius Dan yesterday, who's also frat. There's a lot of dope alphas, bro. But
sometimes when people say I'm leaving this church because the pastor is D9, I'm like, where you going to go? you might find yourself running
right back. You're right back.
So shout out to Dr. Darius Daniels, who is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
100%. But one thing that I was listening to what was it? Oh, matter of fact, it was him and it was the new Lecrae joint, the B-side on the B-side. Yeah. So one of the things he was talking about on that one, he was like, man, I don't like these spiritual gifts assessments because all they do is they try to put you in a space to be able to serve in the church.
Yeah.
So for the average church gender, especially now in 2023, 2024, that's going to church 1.4 times a month. How many hours of your week are you in the local church versus how many times are you out in the community, or at work or at the grocery store? How can we then better equip for that? And I think the church does well to do things to get free labor. Sorry, and aka volunteer. but what does that look like for being that salt? Everywhere else.
Everywhere.
That's where we're at 99% of the time.
And I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time, because as we record this, my outreach team is upstairs.
Absolutely.
You know, preparing food to give away to the community. And so, yes, it's volunteer labor, if you want to call it that. It's people serving the kingdom through their local church. That's beautiful, and it should happen. We should do it. And how can we also, but I challenge them as well. Okay, after y'all give this away to these folks, keep a bag to the side to take to your neighbor.
Absolutely.
Right? Because again, I want you to, I want you to know, I don't want you to just serve through the church. I want you to serve from the church, because you are the church. Wherever you are the church. And
that discipleship and development that happens there should be for the 99.
Absolutely.
It should be for the 99. You know what I mean? Like that's why discipleship matters. That's why leadership development matters. That's why all those things matter, because we need those. I need those in my household. I need those with my family. Like I need that stuff to be transferable, and that's what that all looks like outside of the session.
Absolutely. Now, okay, so Trev, this couldn't be an exhaustive conversation. We couldn't hit everything because there's hours and hours and hours of footage, right, of folks giving their reasons for denouncing. And so there's a couple things we haven't hit. Let's hit one real quick. What happened recently is somebody got a hold of Alpha's ritual and posted it online, and some people said, well, there are altars and oaths when you become a member of this fraternity, and you should only bow at one kind of altar, or whatever the case may be. But any hang-ups on that? Any thoughts on that?
Right. On my way down here, I passed NSA, Fort Meade. I got frat brothers who work in APG and all the rest of that kind of stuff. If you ask them right this second, what do you do?
What do you have to do in order to become? You have to give in.
Oh,
you absolutely do.
You're sworn to secrecy.
Yes.
Matter of fact, you're legally bound.
You're legally bound by the oath that you made.
What about police officers?
Police officers. What about
lawyers?
In January of next year? There's going to be an inauguration for some octogenarian, and and what is that person going to do? They're going to give an oath of office.
Yes.
And so what folks say is, well, the Bible says you shouldn't take oaths. And that's what frustrates me, Trev, because clearly there's a lack of biblical exegesis here. Because in context, Jesus is not saying don't ever take an oath in the way that you and I think oaths. Jesus is speaking to your reliability and the trueness and the reliability of your word. He's saying let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you don't have to say stuff like I swear to God, or I swear on my grandmama's grave, or because people know that your yes is yes and your no is no. Jesus is not giving us instructions not to make commitments. And that's what we do when we go to jury duty. And we swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We've made an oath in that manner, and we do it on the Bible in many cases. And so, I believe what's happening is we got to understand that we do oaths all the time. We even make oaths at altars. Both of us are married. What did we do when we got married? We went to somebody's altar.
So repeat after me.
And we made a commitment. And an altar is not just a place where a sacrifice is made. It's a place where a solemn vow is made.
That's good.
And the reason you do it at an altar is because you're inviting God, not some pagan God. You're inviting God Almighty into the decision that you're making to make this solemn vow to this person. I did that with La, where we sat at an altar, stood at an altar, and we made a solemn vow to one another to do something we was already going to do anyway. Yeah. And so for me, when I became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, what I believe I did is I invited God, the real God, the true and living God, Yahweh, into a decision that I was making to do what I was going to do anyway.
Absolutely.
To be the type of human being that exemplifies the principles of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, because those principles are aligned with who Jesus is and what the Bible, the type of man that the Bible teaches me that I should be. Yeah.
And listen, once again, on the other side, to your point, Alpha is not a Christian organization.
It's not a Christian. That's the very first thing they said to me when they knew I was a pastor.
Absolutely.
Hey, this is
That's
not
the
a
first thing I
Christian
said to my
organization.
guy. Yeah. And there are things that happen, and there are intentional. There are people in it that go haywire. Hazing still does exist at the end of the day through all BGLOs. Like there are,
as much as we try to stop it, and there is a concerted effort to
absolutely. But like knowing what you're walking into, knowing what you're committing to, knowing who your ultimate allegiance is. I think all those are major things, man, that we really got to consider as we're either looking to be a part of a BGLO or looking to see like, oh Lord, is this? Do I need to be pulling out? And to just reiterate, I respect and commend everyone that pulled out for their own convictions.
Reasons.
So I mean, continue to do just do your own research, do good exegesis, have good healthy conversations with I would say have healthy conversations with people who don't agree with it, but also those who do agree with it, just so you can have a balanced view.
And I think as we shut this down, I think that's one of the things that we talked about, the genius of social media and YouTube, etc., because it gives folks platform. I think the shadow of it is we're doing a lot more talking and having a lot less conversations. And I think that's what's happening. Whether it's somebody who's coming out to denounce publicly or whether it's somebody that's coming out to refute the denouncers, I think what's happening is we're all getting on our soapbox and saying everything we want to say, but we're not pulling people aside and having conversations. And I think that's what needs to be had. Not in order to convince the other person to come to your side, but to understand where the other person is coming from and to round out, because every perspective has blind spots. And that's why we have conversations. And that's why we should have conversations with people who disagree with us, because even if I don't end up agreeing with you, our dialogue will help me to be clear about what the blind spots of my perspective is. And so my encouragement to you, if you are thinking about becoming a member of a Black Greek letter organization, if you are a member of a Black Greek letter organization, if you have denounced, I want to encourage you to continue the conversation. Let's not stand and throw rocks. My hope is that we haven't done that today as best as we can. And let's not shoot our arguments across the waters. But let's sit down with each other and let's have conversations, because I think what we will find as we speak the truth in love, the Bible teaches us, then we all grow. We all grow up into maturity, and all of us have growth to do. And so I pray that that we all have clarity on what God is calling us to do, and grace and encouragement and love for others as God leads them. And so,
can I just
jump in?
Just in just a 10-second, I just want to shout out to all our spiritual big brothers who are Blake Wilson,
Houston, Texas.
Yeah, Houston, Texas. Watson Jones.
Yes, Chicago.
My sponsor, Darren Thompson, who's up in Joppa. Brother Michael T. Smith, who's in West Baltimore. Just the folk the alphas that have guided me and cared for me and shepherded me and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So listen, there's some alpha pastors that's trying to shepherd your soul.
You making me call names: Nerney Mason, Charlie Dates. You mentioned Watson Jones. There are several that helped us, and for me, including you, because you were one of the calls when I was coming in and had questions. So man, thank you for being an encouragement to me. Thank you for joining us on Everybody Hates Church for this conversation. Everybody hates the D9. I hope it's been helpful for you. Hey, if you got thoughts, we want to hear them. And so make sure that you follow Everybody Hates Church on Instagram and on TikTok. Make sure that you subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Hit me up at Dr. B Manning. Would love to have this conversation further with you as we continue all these conversations at the intersection of faith and culture. We'll catch you next time on Everybody Hates Church.
It's notable how I got quotables when I am promoting this fame. I got a habit of preaching, I got a habit of teaching, got a habit of hitting the floor when I'm in his face like I got a weak chin. Light of the world, keeping us lit. Find me a pearl, he will eclipse, got a referral. Jesus is it.